in hockey, we can say you coach hockey, but you really should say you coach people. And
Yeah.
you don't start with a puck, you start with a person. It's really the person who stands in the middle, and every person brings so much good.
Whether you're making computers or you're building highways or you're leading teachers as a principal in a school, you don't start with the puck, you start with the person.
Welcome to Leading with Curiosity. Command and control leadership is dead. We interview leaders, entrepreneurs, and executive coaches challenging old paradigms and fostering cutting-edge leadership. Here's your host, certified executive coach, Nate Leslie.
Bjorn Kinding, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Nate. I'm glad to be here.
We're going to jump right into an amazing part in your career. So you've been coaching professional hockey since 1979. As a kid growing up in Switzerland, I knew of who you were, and you and my father had been in a few similar circles around that time coaching in Switzerland. You've coached 4 different countries' national teams, 2 of which we're going to zero in a little bit today as we talk about team culture, Japan and South Africa. Let's jump right to Japan. Nagano, 1998. How did you end up there? And then we'll get into what you learned along the way.
Well, I always been interested in the world, seeing the world, but Japan in particular, it was Dave King, who I got to know early in my career and became a mentor for me. And he was the GM for the Japanese Olympic team and was supposed to hire a coach. So he put me on his list and we had an interview, and I guess I did all right, or the other guys were not interested.
You and I have gotten to know each other over the last couple of years, and what I've really noticed, what I think sets you apart from a lot of hockey coaches, is your understanding of the world. You love history, geopolitics, or a really high level view of things. How did that influence your first few steps into coaching the Japanese national team, preparing them for the Olympics?
I think I always saw myself, because of my parents, that I was very much aware of the globe, international affairs. They were both volunteers in a peace organization. They were both teachers. And I think it's just in the DNA that seeing the world and appreciate the world, the diversity was something that was just something I would never discuss. That was automatically in my body. So working in Sweden and then in Denmark and then in Switzerland and spending a lot of time in the United States and Canada, I knew a few languages and I thought I knew the world. So Japan that would be interesting. And it was interesting, and it was very much a learning shock, if you want. There was so different culture and so much to learn to be able to function well in that environment.
You told a few stories to me about that experience that really sparked this in me as the number one topic I wanted to talk about. So you're Swede, hired by a Canadian, coming in to coach the Japanese national team, the Olympics being held in their own country. And so you'd had a lot of that cross-cultural experience already, but what suddenly became very clear to you when you got this team together?
Well, number one, that you can't take anything for granted, which you never should do. But in this case, it was very clear. Japan is not just one country. It's a lot of different cultures within the country. And on top of that, the team was put together with players from northern Japan, as well as southern Japan or central Japan, and then people with Japanese passports from Canada and Sweden. So there were different groups in the team from the very beginning and much more extreme than on a regular team. But what I didn't understand from the very beginning is that the loyalty for a Japanese person is not to the government or to their city, it's to their company, the company that employed them. And all these teams were the club teams were all company teams. So what I didn't understand from the very beginning was that the players did not really play for Japan. They played to make their company proud. And that was...
So explain that to listeners that might not realize that the professional teams in Japan are sponsored and funded by their company, right? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think historically it might have shifted a little bit now, but up until that time, companies supported all their employees with their talent. So if you happen to be good in gymnastic and you work for a certain company, they try to make you progress as much as possible in gymnastic. And if you ended up in the Olympics and winning, that was a big thing for the company. They could brag about that, and they should. And the players growing up in that culture, they wanted to make their company look good. And when I really noticed it, it was a little too late. We had just finished tying Belarus, and at that time you could tie; there was no overtime. So we had tied Belarus, which was a big success because Japan was ranked 25th in the world, and we were not supposed to be there on our own qualification just because as a organizing country. And we had tied them, which was a huge success, and that was over what we expected. The goal was to be competitive, and if we could win a game, that would be a huge bonus. And here we are tying a team with some NHL players on it. And I came in and was so happy, and I looked at my interpreter, and my assistant coach was just the opposite from happy. I don't want to use any foul language here on. But anyway, so I asked him, well, what's wrong with him? Like, we just tied, we made it. I've been working now for a year and a half, and look at that. We actually won a point at the Olympics. And he just looked at me as if I was crazy and said, don't you understand? You benched the players from his company in the last period. So now he has to go back to his company and explain how come our guys are not part of the success when we have to be ashamed of ourselves when the other company guys can go around and bragging about this. And I said, well, I'm glad you told me this, but it would have been nice if I known that 18 months ago, So
yeah. So you said ashamed.
The companies sponsor the players. They pay their salaries the whole 18 months when they were with the national team. So he had to go back and explain why they should have put in all that effort when they finally had some success, they were not allowed to be part of it,
Wow.
And
Gee, it's like youth parents saying, hey, I'm paying a lot of money to have my kid on this team.
Maybe.
Why isn't she playing?
Maybe. Or yeah.
Wow. But you said that it would have been nice to know 18 months ago. And how might that have shaped your coaching?
I probably would have addressed it. We had some excellent assistant coaches, guest coaches to come in and help us. And another situation with the Japanese culture is this Kohei senpai, that an older player is always treated with respect from anyone who's younger. And we were doing an off-ice checking weekend, and we had a football coach from Canada and a conditioning coach from Canada to come in, and they know about this Kohei senpai. So what they did with that group was to explain that your culture is great in the society. Hockey has its own culture. If you want, you can step into the hockey culture or stay where you feel comfortable. But if you do step into the hockey culture, you allow the younger players to body check you in this practice. And the way they build it up, James Gattinger was the fitness coach from Calgary and football coach from Edmonton University. Tony Fasano was the football coach. And the way they build it up, they also fired up the players. So you could see the older players just jumping into the hockey culture. And one of them, his name was Yuri Iga. He was in his mid-30s, and he got hit, and the glass cut his eye. So he had to go out and get some stitches.
Yeah.
And he's just sitting there waiting to get back in again and allow a young guy hit him again, because something like that had never happened in his whole life, that the young guy would dare to touch him in practice. So with the help of these two guest coaches, we find a way to explain that Japanese culture is great. Keep it that way. And I'm being a little older than you. I'm really happy that you carry my bag. Thank you for that. But when we play in practice, we're in the hockey culture. You don't have to get onto the ice, but if you do, you agree to that. That's another culture you're allowed to be in at this time.
Yeah.
They really broke the ice. Those two guest coaches.
So acknowledging, right? Not saying, not putting down the culture, acknowledging that it's there, and hockey has its own. So there's a metaphor in there for a leader listening that might not be involved in sport on this podcast here. We have a culture here. And tell us a bit more of that free will, that option you gave them. If you can choose to engage in this or not, but it's up to you.
It was presented, and then the players bought into it, and that was the norm after that. Yeah, they know that on this side of the boards, it's hockey. And on the other side of the boards, in the locker room and on the bus and wherever we were, it's Japan. So there was not more said, really. It just worked from that initiative.
Wow. And this is a case where, like you said, there's a lot of hierarchy in place there based on things like age, where typically the older players would play more probably and get passed to more often, right? It really gets into the details like that in living this Kohei Senpai.
Yeah, and they're so used to it, so there's no way that they could do it differently. Our interpreter, he spent a lot of time in Canada, spoke English perfectly, know hockey better than I, Chris Wakabayashi. He was middle of the pack in age, so we had to respect some of the players very differently than the others. And he usually called out who's going to be on the ice the next shift, and we just used the nicknames. So Otto was Otomo, that was his last name, but he went by Otto. And Masa was Matsura, and that was his last name too. So I could say, okay, penalty killing. Hey, Chris, tell Oti and Masa to get on the ice. And he has to say in Japanese then, Honorable Mr. Matsura, which is Matsura-san, would you please take the next shift? But that's impossible to say in a different way when you talk to an older player. And then it turns its head and look at Otomo, was a young player. And he said, Otto, I told you to be on the ice. Get out there right now.
Wow.
So it's impossible. And I tried to explain that with how you treat your friends and how you treat your grandma. If you're sitting at the table with your friends and your grandma, you wouldn't say, you might tell your friend maybe, hey, Billy, give me a bit better butter, or Billy butter or something like that. And to the grandma, you would say it very differently. Grandma, would you mind passing me the butter, please? Even if you're like 50 years old and she's 80, like you would still have that level of respect when you talk to certain people, even in the Swedish, Canadian, Swiss, Danish culture.
Yeah.
It's a little stricter in Japan, but it's the same general idea.
And so you tried to honor certain things like that, if I'm hearing you right, as coming in rather than bringing the Swedish way or the Canadian way. There were certain things that you felt needed to happen in your paradigm through your hockey culture, but there was also ways to still honor their culture.
Yeah, and I don't want to say it my way, because Dave King was definitely a big portion of this, the visionary who saw what actually helped them play better and was helping them to what would be a good thing to keep. So it was more his ideas, or it was his ideas and his thinking and his experience that formed how the rest of us coaches worked. So I don't want to sit here and say that I came up with something brilliant when we had Dave King leading the way and these two guest coaches coming in with a very good solution, and I'm built on that. Yeah.
In leadership, we often talk about culture is around behaviors and how it feels to be part of a group. And I hear that sense of you, and also deflecting some of that praise to Dave King, one of the greats in our hockey history, around what behaviors are expected and which ones we may need to modify, and which ones we need to keep and honor, right?
Absolutely. I mean, in hockey, we can say you coach hockey, but you really should say you coach people. And you don't start with a puck, you start with a person.
Mm-hmm.
It's, it's might be a book if we go through the whole way, but it's really the person who stands in the middle, and every person brings so much good. Don't change that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's translatable here no matter where the listener is coming from, starting with the person, essentially not the task, whether you're making computers or you're building highways or you're leading teachers as a principal in a school. Don't start with the puck, you start with the person.
Yeah. Yeah.
You mentioned something a few minutes ago too that really caught my attention that listeners can probably relate to in hockey, and it's maybe one of the things that isn't so great about what some might consider a bit of a monoculture. In hockey, oftentimes the room is quite homogeneous. There's a lot of similarities. This group, you acknowledged right from the start, was very diverse. Leaders in non-sport probably deal with very diverse teams more often than we might and we could get nuanced here, but than we might in sport. Tell us a little bit more about that feeling of the diversity in the room and how that was a little bit new to you.
Yeah. Maybe South Africa is a better example because
Sure.
that country has been divided since, before anyone could write about it. So they are very much fixed in their role in society, where they come from and where they fit in. For an outsider like myself, it's not easy to understand where those borders go. We know that apartheid had a division with colors of the skin, but for the people living in South Africa, there are so many nuances on that division. So I came in and I saw a group of hockey players, and when they have their gear on, they look the same. The difference is that the goalie has goalie pad on them, and some hold the sticks to the left, other to the right, and some skates better than the others. I didn't see any division. I didn't really peer through the face mask and see if there were different color, and I didn't really care. Nelson Mandela changed that so many years ago, so I didn't think that was an issue anymore, and it really wasn't. But I noticed it when we had a TV crew come out to make a story before the World Championship that was to be played in Cape Town. And I saw the crew on the ice with 5 or 6 players, and there were what I thought, no black players on the ice. And I told our GM that, we should really show that it's a diverse team. We should have him and him and him out there with the camera as well. And the GM told me, well, they're making a story about the fact that our captain is colored. I was like, really? Where? And how do you see that? Yeah, for them, if it was a little more gray there, or a little more red there, or a little more yellow there, that was automatically noticed. And that was a big story. So apparently we had a whole bunch of players that they called colored, and I was not aware of it. And I talked to the team and said, the only race I see in the team, I didn't use the word race, but the only divisions I see in the team, or the only difference I see in the team, are goalies, defensemen, and forwards. There's no other way to divide you. And they didn't already before I said that, but I think that was nice for them to hear.
And so do you feel like, again, this example here, were they able to embrace your ideas of bringing the hockey culture into what is a very storied and interesting history?
Yeah, yes. I also think that the sport has been played for quite a long time in South Africa, and what kept different groups of the country outside was the cost. It's very, very expensive to play hockey because it's equally expensive as it is here, but the salaries are a tenth of what people make in Canada. Like $500 a month is a regular salary. $300 for a hockey stick is also a regular price. So yeah. So it's been a sport that not too many people could afford, but the new leadership there with the president, Jason Surf, and the GM, Chris, give you his last name when I remember it. They are very much helping everyone who can't afford to still find a way to play, and that makes all the teams much more diverse. And they've been together for so many years that they don't notice the difference themselves. But some obviously have a tougher time to express themselves in English than others. If English is their third language and they speak Zulu or they speak Xhosa or another language from the very beginning. But everyone knows they come from somewhere and they are together for a reason. And the reason is to represent South Africa in the very best way.
I noticed in both of these cases, in Japan and South Africa, you acknowledged what you were seeing and created, and then as the leader had a vision for the way forward that might be different than they're used to. Do you notice that?
I think the important thing we did was not to address divisions, but was to address the common goal. And as we said about Japan, the common goal was to be competitive, look good, make Japan look good. They had a little slogan that was said, was it compete, never quit, or something like that? But it was in those terms. It was not take home the gold medal or own the podium or anything that's appropriate for nations with a history of winning ice hockey tournaments. But
so rallying or having a vision and rallying around a common goal that isn't necessarily a metric. It's maybe it was a behavior or a way of being is aspirational.
Yeah.
Brought down some of those barriers. You weren't going to solve some of those multi-100-year cultural things in that moment, but getting people rallied around a goal, which is a great segue into the third thing that we wanted to talk about. The difference between, or balancing team members, whether it's in sport or business, having individual goals, and rallying around a common goal and making sure those don't interfere. So let's jump on that. Tell us about your thoughts and feelings on that balance of having a team goal and individual goals.
Yeah. So team is basically a goal. You cannot be a part of a team if you have a different goal than what the team goal is. And you cannot really have two goals either. You have to figure out one goal. And it could be as simple as win as much as we can or show our best side or something like that. Where the teams I've had, it's usually been like score the next goal. That's the only goal we have, like score the next goal. So in practice, we have to work on being prepared that we have a better chance to score the next goal than the opponent has, which brings a lot of small steps on the way. Like we have to take the puck first or stuff. Yeah. So when you know the main goal, you get into the micro goals. What's going to happen in this very second right now to advance us towards to the main goal? And without those micro goals, it's very tough to run anything. If you don't know,
the micro goals is the strategy. It's the how, right? It's the how you're going to get to that vision.
In a way, it is, but the how is sometimes thinking first and then do it, where a micro goal is instinctively, this is what I do in this very situation because I know where it should lead to. Like right now, it might be the best thing to pass the puck to my opponent so I can shift and get the fresh guy on the ice. That might be the best thing right now. So that's the micro goal. Get the puck over there and change. There are actually two things, two micro goals. Get the puck over there. Okay, next one. Now what? Change.
More on instinct that move you towards the other goal.
Yeah.
So you need to trust that.
Yeah.
Trust the instincts. And,
yeah. And I mean, it becomes an instinct if you want, or a habit when you've done it enough times. So to produce that habit, you kind of need the reinforcement all the time from teammates, hopefully, and then from coach or director or whoever is leading the group.
It comes in two forms: catching people doing it right and celebrating it, and also trying to correct when it doesn't, right?
Yeah. And more importantly, since it is a goal in the instant, give that feedback instantly or even just before you get the puck. The puck is coming to you. Where's your teammate? Where's your support? Making him realize that receiving the puck is not good enough. I should already know what to do with the puck when I receive it. So having a coach telling you what your options are or making sure that you know your options, or even better, your teammate. Okay, I'm here. I got you. You got it. That communication is building to do the right play, but also coaching themselves.
Now to bridge that to a wider audience beyond hockey too. I love that. Tell us a little bit more about, okay, the coach can help, i.e. the boss, right? But even better, the teammate. Talk about that teammate to teammate collaboration being more effective.
Yeah, it's a little bit of what coaching is or what leadership is. I mean, you can't lead if you have no followers, You can't lead if you have no followers. And I can sit here now and talk about different ways of doing things and no one watched this video. Was I coaching? No, I wasn't, because there were no one to receive it and nothing happened. Even if someone did look at it, they didn't do anything with it. So there was no coaching happening. So coaching is not the one-way street. It's not giving a lecture. The coaching happens when you have a teamwork between the employee or student or hockey player or whoever it is, like a teamwork between the one who's leading and the one who is being led. But the true leader is the one who's being led, because before he or she actually does it, there has been no coaching. And before you get one player picking up on what you're saying when you think you're coaching, before you get one player picking up on what you're saying and actually do it, that player becomes actually the leader, because now it's okay for everyone else to follow. So the true leader on a team is not the coach or the director or the president or whoever has the responsibility for the outcome of the efforts, but the first responder, the first who picks up and actually execute what the instruction or ideas or the suggestion or whatever you want to call it, what they are, because he becomes the one that everyone follows.
Which is a choice, and leadership is a choice, not a position, right? So when someone chooses to pick up that ball, pick up that puck, pick up that idea and go, that's leadership to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And you want to have a culture where it's cool to pick up something new and do it. When you have a culture,
this is great.
When you have a culture where it is, you try to be the teacher's pet. We know you're better because you're just acting in front of the teacher to make sure that you look good in front of her or him. And why would we trust you? That culture is very common in schools. I mean, I taught in schools too, and I was headmaster of a college for a year. That culture is very common in the classroom, but you don't want that in the workforce.
Yeah, where you want a culture where it's cool to pick up something new. What do you think a listener can do to influence that culture?
Yeah, I think it's again, it goes back to that you have the same goal. If the hockey player, or if I keep speaking about hockey, or the student in the classroom or whoever it is, if they know that whatever the leader is doing is making us come closer to that goal, if that trust is there and they agreed on what the goal is, why not pick up on an idea that would get us there?
Yeah. I love how aspirational and not specific and kind of a way of behaving your examples of goals were. That's, when we work with a goal, vision, objective, those can be interchanged depending on the context. And it's like a picture tells 1,000 words. Those examples you used of, first of all, can you remind me of what they were? Let's double down on that idea of having an easy to remember, short, aspirational goal or vision for the team.
Yeah. Again, the simplest way to start a season is to score the next goal. That's the only thing you need to have in mind. You cannot win the overtime in the Stanley Cup final that's going to be played in June, in August when you start training. I mean, it's
right.
Yeah. So you need to know what you need to do right now.
There you go. That score the next goal. I mean, and the puck's in our end, right? What are all the things we need to do to put ourselves in the position to be successful?
Yeah. And if you're up by one goal and it's 2 minutes to play, we don't really need to score the next goal today. We save that for next time. So it automatically becomes defense first for the last 2 minutes, and take the win.
As a wrap up, let's spark an idea here for the listener on how individual goals can actually get in the way
Yeah.
of a team goal. You're passionate about this. Tell us
Yeah.
more.
Anecdotes are always cool, but the whole idea is that if you are working for a company, you're on that company's team from 9 to 4 or whatever it is. And anything else during that time should not be another goal than what you agreed upon is your goal in that company, for that company. And then you go home and you have your family and you have other goals at that time. And then maybe in the evening you do some studying, and that's your education. So you belong to different teams at different times of the day. And your full commitment has to be to whatever goal that team around you has at that time. But when they start to conflict within the same time zone, then it's just destructive. Then you're not on the team anymore. So an anecdote, if we have time, one of my players came to me and said, "Can I take the practice off tomorrow because my family is coming in on the airport and I need to pick them up?" And I said, "Well, how does this help us coach next?" And I didn't have to remind him that that's why we're here, because that's what we talk about all the time. And he was didn't really have an answer on that. So I said, if you practice with everyone else and we have the equipment manager pick up your family, we solve both goals, don't we?
Mm.
And that's obviously what happened. And I can't know if he scored his next goal or not.
Yeah.
To make the story better, he had a hat trick and we won it. Yeah. But the last part is not true. And you only need to go through that once, especially if in this case it was one of our star players, because their families are the ones that fly in. The other ones live there already. So you only have to do it once. And if it's with one player who has a very big role on the team, the rest of the players won't even ask. They just say, yeah, it's good for him, so it's for sure good enough for me.
And you removed the barrier by offering the equipment manager, right? You didn't leave the family high and dry. You still you leveraged different strengths on the team at the right time.
Yeah.
The other one that came to mind for me, as I was thinking about this idea, was, and we'll try to make it a metaphor for the non-hockey people listening, is that, let's say, for example, a defenseman's goal is to get 10 shots a game, right?
Yeah.
And your power play is around plays out of the corner. That goal will directly negatively impact the team strategy, right?
Yeah.
So it's important for leaders to know what their team members are working on. For example, if you're in a company and you have a team member who has a goal of getting better at public speaking, you'll find opportunities to create public speaking. Okay, maybe you can take the next presentation or work towards that in support of them finding even more meaning in their work. We can't just ignore, it's really important for leaders to understand what their team members are trying to get better at, as long as it's not in direct conflict with the team goal. For example, if we need the forward shooting on the power play and a defenseman every time he gets it is just shooting on net, it breaks the strategy, right? What do you make of that kind of analogy of how we can develop people in areas they're passionate about while maintaining that standard of the expectation of the team? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it goes into that different teams on different times. And the fact that I work for, say, Volvo as a salesperson, but I say Volvo because their main office is where I grew up. I work in the sales office, and I work there from 9 to 4 or 9 to 5. And I have one goal, sell things. But during those 8 hours, I might also be on another team in Volvo, which is the Volvo's educational department. So between 2 and 3, I have a meeting with our human resources, and they put me in different courses. And now I work with her to become a better salesman or whatever it is, public speaker, as you suggested. So just because you are in one huge organization doesn't mean that you only have one team or one role and it's 9 to 7 or 9 to 5 every day for 40 years.
Well, then it's about getting clear on being present in the moment. What is most needed from me now? And that does shift. So whether it's in between those big hours of 9 to 5 at Volvo or 5 to 10 with my family, or even inside of that. It's about being present and being aware of how am I most useful right now.
Yeah.
Now.
You can never change the future and you can't change the past, but you can influence the present.
But you can influence the present. Bjorn, I knew we'd find some nuggets of gold in here for listeners beyond hockey, and I really appreciate you challenging my way of thinking as well, and really appreciate your time on the podcast here today.
I like the gold nugget better than the 13th at the Olympics, but we're pretty proud. We're pretty proud of being 13th at the Olympics as well.
13th is all right too. The goal was clear, right? The goal was not gold.
As long as there are 14 teams in the tournament.
Yeah. Good. Thanks for your time, Bjorn.
Thanks, Nate. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Leading with Curiosity. Please share, follow, and rate the show so that other leaders can make positive change in the world. Connect with Nate at nateleslie.ca. And remember, the brain behaves very differently when encouraged to think rather than told to listen.